Hello, I'm Angela Kane, a communications and marketing consultant for Child Advocates. Child Advocate stands for justice and equity for children and youth every day. It is at the heart of who they are and who they have been for 40 years. In this Zoom Spotlight, we want to share some of the main programs Child Advocates offers vulnerable children who face abuse and neglect. So right now you learn about its direct representation program, a program where Child Advocates is breaking ground as the only agency of its kind in the state that offers a free in-house attorney for older children in the child welfare system. Currently, Indiana is one of only 6 states that does not guarantee that a child will have an attorney to represent them in court. So joining me are Cindy Booth, Child Advocate CEO, and Rachel Roman Lagunas, also the Director of Direct Representation. And it's good to have you ladies both with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
And it's good to share your story. And I'm going to start with you, Rachel. Your department offers some unique services for children age 12 and older who face abuse and neglect. What is direct representation? Talk specifically about what you do.
Sure. So children in the child welfare system do not have lawyers in most cases throughout the state of Indiana, which is different than kids in the delinquency system, right? Of course, a kid who is alleged to have committed a crime, they are brought to court. And even before that first hearing, they normally talk with a lawyer. And that lawyer is going to talk to them about what their rights are and what's going to happen in court and who's a probation officer, what is a judge, and then talk about how the case will go forward. And also talk about what the kid wants to do, what the child wants to do. Do they want to admit to something? Do they want to not? And then what are the consequences of what's happened? But in the child welfare system, we have kids who are brought to those same very similar court hearings. They might not have charges against them, but they still have people in court, a judge, a CASA, a DCS. What is DCS? What does that stand for? What can DCS do? Well, they can remove you from your home. You know, that's what we would tell kids. And as a kid, they still have many, many rights in the child welfare system, but there's no lawyer normally advising them about their rights and making sure that they waive any rights that they want to, or assert any rights, like their right to be in court or the right to present evidence. And so the direct representation program, or really Child Advocates, saw that this was a huge gap in our system where children, they did have non-attorney guardian ad litems or CASAs who sometimes are volunteers depending on where you are in the state, but they didn't have anyone making sure that their legal rights were protected and standing up for them by filing legal motions and making legal arguments based on case law, right? And so Child Advocates saw the need and started direct representation where children can request a lawyer in their child welfare case. And we have some 10-year-olds now. And of course, somebody may say, well, how do you represent a 10-year-old? We spend a lot of time with that 10-year-old, right? You're doing diagrams, you're drawing out what the courtroom looks like, you're drawing out, you know, where different people sit and explaining the roles and then explaining it again. But at the end of the day, it's the 10-year-old and the 12-year-old and 14, 16, 18-year-old. They are supposed to be at the center of the case, and they are the people that we're there to serve. So we need to make sure that they know the information when it's appropriate and as much information as they can know that so they can make educated decisions in their case about what they want to happen. And of course, the judge is not always going to do what the 10-year-old or 12-year-old or 18-year-old wants to happen, but the judge should certainly hear from that person about what it is that they want to happen, and then hear from all the other parties as well. And then the judge can make a true, well-informed decision. But without hearing from the child after the child has, you know, learned about all of their rights and learned about all of their options from a lawyer, without the child's recommendation, the judge is really missing a piece in every decision in the child welfare system.
It is definitely critical what you do. So can you tell us too about a story? There have got to be many, but one story through direct representation where you really felt you've made a difference for a child.
Well, there's been a couple times where a child is placed in a residential facility, and these are secure, private, locked residential facilities throughout the state, sometimes hours away from their home. And we've been able to come up with alternative plans for them to go with a different family member or a different friend. And we come up with these community plans and we get them released. And I note that only because it ends up saving the state over $100,000 basically every time we do that, because these facilities cost $500 or $600 a day. But my favorite story is a kid that I just visited a couple weeks ago. And he has always said, you can share my story as much as you want, because I'm so proud of him. And I know he's proud of himself too. He was in a facility, and a locked facility. And there was a football program that he had identified that he wanted to go to. And of course, the facility was like, well, we're not taking you to that program. And DCS, the Department of Child and Family Services, who was in charge of his care, said, well, we're not going to pay for that program. And the guardian ad litem, said, well, like, I don't really care. He could go or he could not go, but they weren't going to advocate for that program. And I went into court and I made a very strong argument, to the point that the placement facility asked for me to be removed from the case. But the judge did not remove me from the case. Instead, the judge ordered that the placement take this child to this football program, right? Like, not a big deal, right? Not a football program. And DCS is required to put these kids in regular activities. So who cares? Well, it mattered, because he met coaches from a nearby high school, and the coaches got him into the nearby high school because they wanted him to play football for the nearby high school, a normal high school. Remember, this kid had been in residential facilities. He hadn't gone to a normal high school in years. So he goes to this normal high school and plays on the football team. And what happens? He meets a friend and becomes very close with this person's family. And then he gets released from the facility, goes to a group home. And guess what? Now he lives with his friend and the friend's family. And he's been living there for a couple months now, and he's doing great. And of course, he's back, playing football because he's in training. It's over the summer right now. And he credits 100%, he will tell you, he credits going to that football program a year ago to, changing his life, 100% changing his life. He says, I would not be living in a home. He's in a home. I would not be living in a home right now if it wasn't for that football program and the steps that came after it.
And that's just one story. And there are so many. Tell me briefly how many young people you've served, 12 and older, so far through this program.
About 200. And then we also present to many youth around the state too about their rights and kind of basic information about the juvenile system.
Great. And Cindy, you created this program, Direct Representation, and broke ground with it. Why do you think it's so critical to the work that you do at Child Advocates?
Well, I'll say I didn't create it. Rachel did that. You can tell by her passion
that's the truth.
and her expertise and her, willingness to do what she needs to do for children, that she was the exact right person to do this. So we had been involved in what's called best interest advocacy for a long time through CASA, Court Appointed Special Advocate. We always, and I was the first one, we always had attorneys helping the CASAs with their work, but that's not the norm across Indiana. And so very early on, as I was attorney and also executive director in the agency, I became connected and became a member of the National Association of Counsel for Children. So I was introduced to the idea of Indiana being kind of this outlier and not having counsel for children quite a while ago, and understanding, one, that it is a right that a child has, really, to have this kind of assistance that Rachel has told you about, and wanting to have whatever we were able to create, whatever project of counsel for children we were going to create, to work alongside the best interest advocacy network that we have in the state of Indiana. So it's a different role. It's not the same role. It is an important role. Both are important roles. When you think about the best interest advocate sort of standing in the stead of the parents, but you really do need it. Sometimes you really do need an attorney advising this older child or advising a child on what their rights are. So that became very important for me to do it. It is all about what else can we do for this child?
Absolutely. It gives choices to children, and some will definitely flourish with direct representation attorneys. And so I'm going to ask you, Rachel, you've been helping child advocates in this area for probably going on 2 years now. What is your why? Because you have been helping children in other ways for a long time as well, as a public defender, juvenile defender. I want to be a defender. I want to say that correctly. And so what is your why? Why do you do this child welfare work?
I was drawn to working with kids from a very young age. There it is, the most vulnerable among us, right? And so public defender, which is what I used to do, that was always really important to me. And then when this opportunity came about at Child Advocates, I still feel like a defender of the public, because what's happening is these children are being removed from their homes and they're being placed in locked facilities or placed in foster homes. And sometimes it's the best option for them, but without a lawyer to protect their rights, to defend them, to ensure that there's not government intrusion that's unnecessary, we have a flawed system. And that really brought me to Child Advocates when I just saw that these children are sometimes their rights are violated and there's no one defending their rights. And so that really bothers me about the system. And more recently at Child Advocates 40th anniversary luncheon, I was reminded of Tikkun Olam, which is to heal the world. I grew up Jewish, and, in Sunday school, I feel like the focus was more about what can we do to give back to the world, and even less about, a focus on God, because that's how the Jewish religion is. It's focused on your time now and ensuring that you're helping people now. And I think that really just instilled in me this, whatever happens in the afterlife, whether you believe in heaven or not, like that's not my focus. My focus is ensuring that people now are protected and have good, happy lives. And I want to contribute as much as I can to our society. And I feel like I can do that at Child Advocates.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry. It was so touching. I love that story because I think that's so important. We really are just all here, I feel. I don't know about you, Cindy, too, to make a difference and to have impact while we're here. Isn't that why you're a child advocate leader, Cindy?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. To make sure no child is unnoticed, unheard, to gather together people like Rachel and others to help mend the world. That's right.
Mm-hmm. And for 40 years, Child Advocates has been doing this incredible work. Thank you, Rachel, for your purpose, for your passion. I love this agency and the impact you've had for thousands and thousands of children over all those years. We're grateful. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome. And if you'd like to learn more about Child Advocates, go to childadvocates.net. Your voice, learn about all their programs, because your voice is their future.